As a creative aspect, TV is one of the best things that we do as a species. Along with music and film and books, they bring out the best creative of all of us. They entertain and they bring so much joy to many. They invoke emotion and enable us to feel things that we bury sometimes deep down. That's what this podcast is for. Welcome to A Million Little TV Shows. This is what I call the breakdown while I break down. Each week I will go through a different TV show, a different season of that TV show, and different episodes of that show. And I will break down not only emotions, but I will break down stories from my life, and let you know why these TV shows mean so much to me, and why I believe that they are some of the most important shows out there. This podcast is here to highlight a lot of smaller TV shows, or TV shows that don't really get a platform, because we know of a bunch of TV shows that get a multitude of different podcasts. Ted Lasso, Game of Thrones, The Office, they've all got several podcasts out there analysing all types of different things. But there's not many out there for the little guy, and that's what I'm trying to highlight. So each week I will go through a different show, different seasons, different episodes, and I will go across all different kinds of genres and different countries to bring you what I believe is some of the best TV out there. So I'm glad you're here with me. I'm glad you're here for this journey. And if you've watched the shows before and you wanted to come here and get an analysis on them and have someone go through them and pick out bits that you might have enjoyed, then I'm glad you are here. If, however, you have never watched the show and you just want to come and have someone talk in your ear about different TV shows, I'm glad you are here. But I hope that it inspires some people to go and seek out these TV shows. They deserve to be watched. They were made with love and care, and they are the same as this podcast, made with love and care. I am your host, Mike, and I will take you through every adventure, every horror, every piece of drama, and I hope that you enjoy the show. Hello there, and welcome back to this A Million Little TV Shows podcast. This is now episode 1 of season 13, and I am really excited to be back, and especially with the lineup that I've got. There's a lot of good things coming, several new series that I'm going to be covering, and I just cannot wait to get into all of those. But of course, first, we're going to be hitting the Bates Motel. Now, I covered the first season of this last season on my podcast, episodes 6, 8 and 10, and I'm going to be covering the second season in episodes 1, 3 and 5 of this season. So, lots to go at, 10 episodes, I cannot wait to get into it. But then, after Bates Motel, we've got a series called Physical that's coming, which is based sort of round about the late 80s, early 90s, and is about a woman who starts her own sort of workout classes and builds up from there. And being in the 80s, it was still very frowned upon for women to actually do anything on their own, which is fucking ridiculous. And I think it was a good, fun series when I watched it. I didn't end up watching season 3 because I was doing the podcast at the time and knew that I would cover it. So I might as well just cover it with you guys, and then I can finally finish off that actual show. I'm very much a completist when it comes to TV shows, and this is one that's been driving me a little bit crazy because, well, I haven't watched the final bit, and generally I won't turn off a TV show even after it's dead and gone. So it will be fun to finally pick that up. Then we're going to be going on to a Spanish show called 30 Coins, which is sort of a mystery thriller type show, which I can't wait to get into. Obviously it's going to be in Spanish language, but I will hopefully be able to guide you through it, especially with my cursory knowledge of Spanish. Then we head into When the Streetlights Go On, which is another thriller, I believe, like a horror. And then we are going to be going into Extrapolation, which is an anthology series about climate change, which obviously in the world we currently live in is a hot button topic. I mean, this came out 3-4 years ago, and it's still probably prevalent today. Probably more so now. But anyway, I'm going to get into it, and I'm glad you're here for the journey. But today we're going to be covering the Bates Motel, Season 2, Episodes 1 to 3. Episode 1, Gone But Not Forgotten. And so we pick up pretty much where we left off from last season. The next morning, Norman is lying in bed, and there is a phone call. That phone call is to all parents, just giving them a warning from the local high school that one of the children's teachers has died. Of course, we know that Blair Watson died last season, and the last time we saw her, she was with Norman. She'd taken Norman back to her house, and then the next thing we see Norman running home, and Blair Watson dead. And so when he finds out about this tragic news, they end up going to the funeral, and Norman ends up crying his heart out over this woman that's died, that his mother describes as you barely even knew her. Not long after this, we end up seeing Bradley Martin driving erratically. She is swerving into oncoming traffic, and she ends up on a bridge where she ends up trying to take her own life. 4 months later, things are a lot different. We see that the business, the Bates Motel, is now booming. There is a lot of passing trade coming through, and things are starting to look up for Norma and Norman. Emma Ducody is now working there pretty much full time. I believe it's still summer, but she's still there quite a lot. And although they are rushed off their feet, Norman is in his own little world as per usual. His mother finds him practicing his taxidermy, which she believes is still very odd for a young boy to be doing, but it seems to keep him calm, seems to keep him under wraps, which is what she really needs from her son. However, she asks him to go down and help out with the motel and help Emma, and when he does, Emma ends up handing him a stack of letters that he'd written. All these letters were for Bradley, because Bradley has been in an institution for the last 4 months. Thankfully she survived, but they knew something wasn't right. Emma tells Norman that she's getting out today, as in Bradley, and he seems a little bit elated by this, but also he's disappointed. All of these letters have fallen on deaf ears. She's not even read them, and now she's coming home, and he's been trying to support her throughout this, but it seems like she's not bothered. However, the murder of Blair Watson is still unsolved. Norman, however, whenever he gets a chance, constantly is going by the grave. And on one occasion, he ends up going down there and finding a man stood next to it. He takes multiple photos of this man while running away, and then he ends up going to the sheriff. Now, the sheriff doesn't really have much time for Norman, but on this occasion, he listens to him. Norman tells him about what's happened. He tells him that he's been going down there every day, and that even though he didn't really know her, yes, he'd been in her home. And essentially, all he's doing while talking is just incriminating himself more and more. It's very frustrating watching Norman do this because, well, he's a bit stupid when it comes to being in the real world. He isn't like his mother who, for her faults, she can lie pretty convincingly. She does it by yelling quite a lot, but, I mean, that'll get you to the White House these days. As soon as he is asked when was he last at Miss Watson's house, he incriminates himself more because you can see that he stumbles over his words as if he's going to say, oh, the night she died, but realises he shouldn't. But if we notice it, so does the sheriff. Because as much of a pain in the ass as he is very dialed into the people of his town. Now that the motel is doing well, though, Norma is in trouble. She goes to a local town council meeting because she finds out that construction on the road that was not meant to be happening anymore because of funding is now happening. It's up and running, and in the next couple of weeks they will have started building. So she's pissed off because it takes traffic straight away from her business. When it's pointed out to her that there are multiple businesses in this area and that it will bring a lot of revenue to the town and that it's not all about you, she obviously goes off. She's not happy with this because, well, it is all about her. So she ends up feeling slighted, as she always does in these kind of situations. She is as subtle as a brick with it as well. And of course, she ends up going and talking to the sheriff about this whole situation as well. And this is where she finds out that Norman has actually been visiting the grave of Blair Watson. So now she's got more shit to deal with when it comes to her son, as well as the motel. Now that Bradley Martin is out, she wants to know what happened with her father. She's still on this whole kick from before where she doesn't actually know. And so she goes and speaks to Dylan. Dylan is still working at the place that her father used to, and she starts asking around about what happened. He obviously can't give her any answers because he doesn't really know anything, but suggests that maybe speaking to Gil would be a good idea. Gil, it turns out, was the boyfriend of Blair Watson, the one who was at her grave, and also the one that Norman has already antagonised. It turns out that Bradley's father and Blair were having an affair, and so after struggling with this for a moment, thinking that she should just end her life, which she nearly does, she takes a gun and points it at her head. She realises something, that maybe she can go and get revenge on the man that potentially killed Blair, but also killed her dad. And so she goes over and she sees Gil. However, with her not giving a shit anymore and not caring about anything anymore, she uses her feminine wiles to try and seduce him. he thinks that he is going to get sucked off, basically, and allows to let his guard down. As soon as she gets to her knees, however, she pulls a gun out, and just before he can actually say anything to her or try and plead his case, she just pulls the trigger. Before going to see Gil, Norman had come to see Bradley, and he had told her that if she ever needed anything, he was there for her. And now, after shooting this guy in the head, well, she needs him. And so she comes to his bedroom at night and asks him whether he will help her clear up the mess that she has made. Episode 2, Shadow of a Doubt. So, since they would have no idea what to actually do with a dead body, Norman and Bradley come up with a plan. Bradley needs to get out of town, and Norman will hide her for the next couple of days until she can do so. But while she is there, she confesses that she has killed Gil, because he was the one who ended up killing her father. Norman seems to take this in his stride, though. He doesn't really flinch when it comes to things like this, and it can be really strange watching him be this flippant when it comes to murder. But he is happy to stand by Bradley at every turn because, well, he still thinks that they will end up together. She, of course, when we last saw her around anyone from the Bates family, was sniffing around Dylan because she's always had a thing for Dylan since she first met him. And to be fair, he seems to have a thing for her too. However, at the time, obviously she was in school, and now, well, she's not anymore. However, due to the fact that Norman has been so distant as of late, Norma is trying to get him back on side. She decides that they're going to go and do this community musical theatre and asks him if he'll come along with her. She wants to train, she wants to start doing some vocal exercises and wants Norman to be there alongside her just before this big event. He, however, is obviously evasive. He wants to spend his time with Bradley as much as he can because soon she won't be there anymore. However, to appease his mother, he ends up going to these auditions. And while he does, it turns out that there's quite a few people there. He isn't too pleased with this because, well, he needs to get back. The day that they go and do the audition is the day that Bradley needs to leave town. And so his focus is more on that than anything else. He wants to be able to take her to the bus station and be able to get her on the bus, because that way it would show that he is the one doing all these things, these glorious things for this girl, so when she comes back to town, when everything is cleared up, they can be together. However, due to the rehearsals that are going on, Norman has to call Dylan, and when he does, Dylan ends up bonding a little bit more with Bradley. Obviously, Norman's not going to know that, but when Dylan ends up coming back to the house and sees Norman, he hands him a note from Bradley saying that Norman is the best person that she's ever known. And of course, in his odd little mind, and I can say that because I've got one very similar, but in his odd little mind, this will make him feel like $1 million and that he is her saviour, essentially. However, now that Gil is dead, there is an investigation going on, and the sheriff is trying to find out who did this. He meets with a man named Nick Ford, who it turns out is Watson's father, but he is also the big boss in town. He controls the whole marijuana trade, the same one that Dylan is caught up in. However, he tells the sheriff that his family had nothing to do with what actually happened, and Romero just has to kind of take this. It's his word against anyone else's, and, well, what is he going to do with that information? He's got nothing to prove that it was the family, so he has to move on. Dylan's new boss, however, because, well, he's got to have one now that Gil's gone, believes it could be potentially a rival gang. So, potentially, at some point, there could be gang wars going on in town over the death of this man, even though it wasn't any of them. Bradley may have caused some real devastation to this town just by killing this one man. As for Blair Watson's death, there are still no answers. However, a semen sample comes back, and it turns out to be a man named Kyle Miller. He is arrested and taken into custody. As time goes on, he essentially says that there could be a multitude of people who had been with her. At the end of the day, she got around a lot by the sounds of things. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but now this woman's dead, and apparently there are several samples that have been found. So even though Kyle Miller was potentially the one who killed her, it doesn't mean that he did. News, however, gets around town that a man has been arrested for Blair Watson's killing, and it means that Norman is currently let off the hook, which obviously will make Norma a hell of a lot happier because she doesn't want her son to go to jail over something that she believes he didn't do, even though we are looking at it knowing that he becomes a serial killer, and therefore it's meant to play on that we are thinking, well, he's got to be the killer because he's a serial killer. And it's quite a subtle thing to do, but it's very clever. However, Norma has more things to deal with in the coming episodes because a man comes to town. He stops off in a garage and he asks where the Bates Motel is. The mechanic tells him that it's just up the road and he asks who he's looking for. This man, Caleb, says, "My sister, Norma Bates." Episode 3, Caleb. And what an episode to end this particular podcast episode on, because this was explosive. So obviously now that Bradley has left and the whole town has been searching for her, they have now ended up finding some clothes and a suicide note. Not knowing that she's left town, obviously, this is the only answer that could have happened. There's no body, but they're not expecting to find one just now. And so the whole town is shocked by this revelation. Emma is the one who breaks the news to the Bates family, and she says that she is setting up a gathering at the beach to kind of honour her memory. Even though while she is at this beach party, Emma confesses to Norman that she never really liked Bradley at all. And even now, even though she's meant to be feeling sympathy, she doesn't. She still never liked her, even though she's sad for her parents that she's gone. So she's feeling a little bit guilty, and that's the reason that she's ended up hosting this party. However, the party's turned into a bit of a kegger, and just everyone from town, especially the kids, have all turned out. They're all drinking and partying and peeing on fires and throwing up and God knows what else, smoking weed. And Emma's a little bit sick of it. However, when she finds out who the weed dealer is, she lightens up a bit because it's the guy from the last season, the one who gave her the weird cupcake. Or the laced cupcake, or at least she believes it was laced. I'm not entirely sure. Caleb, however, has managed to find the Bates Motel, and when he turns up, he asks for Norma. Dylan, who is the only one who's there, essentially tells him that she's not here and I'll be here when she gets back, so what do you want? And he says, look, I'm her brother, I'm just looking for her, and I just wanted to make sure that she was safe. Dylan, not knowing that she had a brother, is, well, shocked by this. However, knowing what we know about her brother from the previous seasons, where Norma had confessed that he actually raped her on several occasions, we know that she isn't going to be happy when he just turns up out of the blue like this. The other, however, is the fact that Dylan and Caleb look very similar. And so as you see them both on screen, it is stark how alike they are. And you can only fear the worst when you see something like that, knowing the history. So he and Dylan start to bond, but as soon as Norma turns up, she goes crazy. She tells him to get out. She cannot believe that Dylan's let this man in and denies ever wanting him back in their lives. Dylan, however, has found a new member of the family that he can be friendly with because, well, his relationship with Norma and Norman is always fraught. Whereas now he's got someone who he feels like he can be akin to. He ends up finding Caleb again and starts to get along with him. Caleb tells them about his past and tells him, look, I always just wanted to look after Norma. I didn't want to hurt her. She is my sister, and it sucks that she feels that she can't actually have me as part of her life. And so Dylan tells him, look, I am willing to defend you. Especially to Norma. She doesn't always listen to me, but when she does, things go well. So hopefully I can get through to her on this one. Norman, however, has ended up going back to this community hall because his mother didn't end up getting into this musical, and now he feels guilty because he was only following what his mother does because that's all he ever does. And so he turns up to tell them that he doesn't want the part that he's been given because Norma hasn't been given her part. However, when he gets there, he meets a young girl named Cody Brennan and instantly is attracted to her. You can see he gets kind of flustered around her and he acts a little bit the way he did around Bradley. Cody, however, isn't shy about how she feels about Norman. She is very flirtatious with him, and she essentially asks him there and then whether he wants to come and join them in the building crew for this play. That way he can learn set design, that way he can do something active, and as she says, get ripped while you're doing it. He obviously floats this to Norma, and Norma is once again pissed off because she doesn't get to have any part of the play, but, well, Norman's gonna Norman. Later on in the episode, he ends up going to this party thrown by Emma, and once again, Cody is there. She comes over, she starts to talk to him, and then next thing, her boyfriend is stood next to her. For the rest of the night, Norman hangs around with her and her boyfriend. However, most of the night, they are just making out. So, Norman is the third wheel in this relationship. However, at one point, They're sat and all of a sudden a hand reaches out onto Norman's lap, and it's the hand of the boyfriend. Norman's shocked, he stands up. This isn't the kind of boy he is, and he kind of puffs his chest out and walks away. He tells them that he's going home. And Cody says, well, I'm going to come with you, this party's dead. And she asks him to walk her home. When he does, she confesses that she thought he was gay all along, and that's why she brought a gay best friend into this. He tells her he's not gay and that he's definitely into women, but before the conversation can go any further, they end up back at the house. It seems that Cody is fearless around anything apart from when she gets home. Whatever it is that's behind that door, well, her father, we know this, is enough to scare her out of not coming to the house. As for Norma, she is having a real tough time of it. Obviously fitting in town isn't helping, especially when she is the one who has railed against this bypass for so long, and she is the only one in town who is going to be affected by it when it actually happens. However, she meets the director of this musical, and this director basically tells her, I've just quit because I wanted you in there, politics got the better of it, and they put someone else in there. But she really likes Norma and she takes her under her wing. She introduces her to some people in town at a party, and Norma starts to feel a little bit better about herself. Norma also ends up meeting this woman, Christine's brother, George, and it seems that Christine has tried to set Norma up with her brother. The interaction's quite awkward, but they do seem to like each other. But Norma says things are moving way too quick for me around here, and she just doesn't want to get into anything right now. Before she ends up going home, she manages to speak to Nick Ford, who was Blair Watson's father. He tells her that he was against the bypass as well, but he can't say anything because he's way too up high in the town council. So it's not really his place to say. And especially with the amount of business that he's got in town, he doesn't want to stop anything like that. But finally Norma is starting to feel like people are on her side until she gets home. Once back at the house, Dylan tries to reason with her about Caleb. He tells her he knows what happened. He tells her that Caleb was always just trying to protect her from her father. And she keeps denying it. She doesn't want to tell Dylan what happened, but at some point it's going to come out. They end up in a blazing row, and she confesses that he raped her. He raped her on multiple occasions. He raped her most nights. By this, Dylan cannot understand and just doesn't want to. He believes that this man he's only met moments earlier, like probably that day, is the best thing since sliced bread, and he won't have a word said against him. He yells and screams at Norma and tells her that she's wrong for saying this. How dare she say something like this? This is absolute bullshit. And then just as they're about to get into it, Norman comes home, hears the raised voices, and goes after Dylan. This time Norman manages to gain the upper hand. Usually he doesn't on Dylan, but this time he does. And while he's mounted him, he starts punching him in the face, and then all of a sudden Norma screams out that he can't help it. He can't help defending him. It's his father. And both Dylan and Norman are both shocked by what has just occurred and why Norma couldn't have said this from the get-go. But again, why would she? So these first 3 episodes are a brilliant start to this season. Again, we are expecting Norman to turn into Norman Bates, the serial killer from Psycho. We keep seeing traits of it. We keep seeing versions of him. But we don't actually see the final product yet. And obviously we're not going to see the final product until his mother is probably dead. But there are certain situations where he just loses his temper for no reason. And his mother is just the same. And all he's doing is just copying her traits. And there's a great scene where they're actually out driving and she is trying to teach him to drive. He is getting more and more upset as she is goading him more and more to do things. For instance, he's trying to pass a truck and she is constantly going, are you going to pass this truck? Are you going to pass this truck? And he gets pissed off. He starts yelling at her, and it's exactly the way that she is in his head. Whenever something weird happens or something bad happens, or, like in the previous season when Blair Watson was trying to seduce him by having the door open. And she wasn't. She probably just forgot that it was open. But because his mother is constantly in his head and she will constantly run him down, he hears that all the time. And so when she's actually running him down, sometimes it's hard to tell whether it's in his own head or not, because even when she isn't there running him down, she's physically in the room with it because he imagines her being there. So it's a very interesting character. He is very interesting, and I love this show. I just really do. I think it's such a good show, and obviously the world building around it is incredible. The fact that Norman is becoming sort of obsessed with some of the women that are around him, obviously he's obsessed with his mother, he obsesses all the time over Bradley, and now he's got this new girl, Cody, who you can see it already. She's different, she's got this kind of 80s vibe to her. She looks a little bit like Michael Jackson in the Thriller video. She looks fucking cool. She's alternative, and you can see Norman has got his dander up at this. She is something different. She isn't just the blonde, beautiful girl that he was looking for before. This is something different. But it's definitely interesting developments for this character, and obviously now we've got the revelation that Dylan's father is, well, he was born of incest, basically. And the fact that he managed to bond with the man now speaks volumes because, well, we can understand why he was so entrenched with him, why he felt so at ease with this guy. Because this guy is his father. Whether he knows that is a different matter, but I guess we'll find out in the next couple of episodes, because that was certainly a shock to Dylan, and even Norman, who knew about the rapes, he was shocked by it as well. However, if he'd have seen him, he may have put two and two together, because Dylan and Caleb look so alike. But anyway, we will find out what happens in the next couple of episodes, and I cannot wait to go through it with you. But for today, I am done. So thank you very much for being here. Like, share, subscribe, all that good shit. You know where to find me if you want to come and chat about any shows or just leave me recommendations. And until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye. As always, thank you for listening to this podcast, and you could really help me and the podcast by giving a like, share, subscribe on all major platforms that you listen to podcasts on. As an independent podcaster, this will just help me exponentially when it comes to actually doing more things with this podcast. I truly do enjoy this, and I absolutely love revisiting these TV shows with you guys. So any engagement from you is always welcome, and I will try and listen to all of you when you give suggestions or just tell me what you think about the podcast. But once again, thank you for listening, and until next time, I will speak to you soon. Bye.